All right, hello everybody. Today's review is going to be of a movie that I just went to see last weekend called The Long Walk. And the thing that I found interesting about this film is that it was a very, very intense film, and it looked like that from the trailer, or yeah, the trailer, I guess, the preview or whatever you want to call it. Now I did even see a little clip of I think the first screen of the movie where they had like people put on like the heart rate monitors, and I believe that people's heart rates went up to like a pretty high rate. I think it was like 122 beats per minute or something crazy like that. That it went up to in certain scenes. It might have been even higher, a higher number than that even. But yeah, I definitely kind of wish I had a heart rate monitor on myself just to kind of track myself in certain scenes because it definitely made your heart race. It was, yeah, like it was a nail biter for sure in some of those scenes, and yeah, not an easy watch. That's for sure. There was definitely some intensity to it, and this movie didn't hold back on anything for that matter. And it was definitely more of like, as far as Stephen King movies go, like we have like It and like Pet Cemetery and all that kind of stuff. Like Children of the, I think was Children of the Corn Stephen King. I'm pretty sure it was, if I'm not mistaken. I definitely know Pet Cemetery and It, and then yeah, The Shining. What else is there? That's a Stephen King novel that's been made into a movie. Now this one was definitely different. Not your typical like. It definitely wasn't your typical like kind of like horror movie, I guess, as opposed to some of the previous ones. It had its. It was kind of more like a psychological scare than anything because you never knew who the next person was going to be that ended up getting their ticket, as they call it throughout the movie. So I gave this movie a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was intense from beginning to end, even though these guys were just walking a very long period of time. Now, this competition, I guess, had been going on for 15 years since the war. I believe they're talking about the Second World War because I can't remember exactly what year this is supposed to be set in, but I do believe that it's been since the Second World War, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that 100%, but they are doing this walk, and it seems that things kind of like it's kind of like the government or maybe the military is trying to control a lot of what happens. It seems, at least that's the kind of vibe I was getting because it seems like the military is trying to do things a new way, and the main character's father was trying to teach him the old ways, and then they ended up killing his father for not complying with them, right? They said you could either, kind of conform with us, or I guess go our way, or, you can say no and you just kind of go and meet God, I guess, is essentially, yeah, you either die or you can, come with us and be one of us. And obviously, his father chose not to go about the ways that they were doing things. I guess he wanted to live freely. Maybe the choice, because it kind of seems like the long walk, even though it's said that people apply for it, it kind of seems like people are just chosen regardless. um, and you don't really have a choice. There is no freedom in it. You just are chosen. 50 people are chosen, and 50 people have to do the walk each year, no matter what. So I imagine if you won, you could possibly be selected a second time to do the walk, which would be pretty crazy. So we'll go over the cast list. Cooper Hoffman, who played Raymond Garrity, who was number 47. David Johnson, who played Peter McVrees, who was number 23. Garrett Wearing, or yeah, Garrett Wearing, who played Stebbins, number 38. Tut Nayut, who played Arthur Baker, number 6. Charlie Plummer, who played Gary Barkovich, number 5. Ben Wang, who played Hank Olson, number 46. Jordan Gonzalez played Richard Harkness, number 49. Josh Odjick, who played Collie Parker, number 48. Mark Hamill, who played the Major, Judy Greer, who played Miss Ginny Garrity, Josh Hamilton, who played Mr. William Garrity, Damon Rightly, who played rank number 19, and Roman Griffin Davis, who played Curly number 7. So those were really I guess like the main characters throughout the movie. Why am I having such a hard time remembering who? Oh yeah, Richard was the one. Oh yeah, Richard was the one that was going to write the book if he won. Now he was writing all the numbers down of the competitors, and I thought maybe he was going to have some sort of strategy when they all kind of meet up at the very beginning of the movie, and they're all kind of getting to know one another. He seems to be writing down everybody's number and trying to get to know them in the early goings of the walk. So they have to walk basically, essentially, until somebody is the winner, right? Like there can't be two people who win. Now there probably could have been. Uh, I'm not really sure how that would have went, whether if two people ended up winning, how that would have gone down. Now they do say, I did read after the movie because I wanted to know if there was a post-credit scene. Unfortunately, there is none, but apparently when the movie comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, there is going to be an alternate ending. So I am kind of interested, again, to watch this movie when it comes out, and I probably will buy a physical copy of it just for that, because it was that good, so I would like to see it again. So again, there's this rule system on the walk that you're not supposed to kind of, I guess, one of the characters, Stebbins, keeps warning them each time they go after the general, which I kind of found odd. There was something just off about that. And then later on in the movie, we find out that Stebbins is actually one of the general's children, and I guess the general, from the sounds of it, got around quite a bit and had many kids, and Stebbins probably doesn't even know if the general knows that he's his son, which is kind of sad. So, unfortunately, Stebbins ends up being one of the last competitors in the race. Yeah, by that point, it was just Garrity, McVries, and Stebbins at that point, um, which was unfortunate. Now, again, each character definitely showed some resilience throughout this movie. Now, McVries was kind of a hero because without him, Garrity definitely wouldn't have made it as far as he did, because he kept falling asleep at night. They had the steep hill where he got almost 3 warnings and then he was shot. So again, the ticket is your death. And let me tell you, there was a lot of deaths in this movie. Now, again, the rule is you get 3 warnings. So you get your first warning, and you have to walk. Each warning is an hour of walking without falling under the speed limit requirement that they have. So you must walk at a pace of, I believe it was 3 miles per hour, which is a pretty reasonable pace to be walking. Don't get me wrong. So again, most of them kind of walked a little bit faster than that normally anyway. And it seems a lot of these people that were in the competition were quite physically fit. Not all of them necessarily, but a lot of them seemed to be kind of fit, kind of like in soldier shape, I guess you could say. And of course, they all wanted that prize money and their wish at the end of the race. That was the main goal, right? Each person had a wish. Now, some of them were obviously there just to kind of, I guess, prove themselves, prove how far they could get, prove to themselves that maybe they could, at least make it part of the way. I'm not really sure. I think it's kind of like I don't know whether it was like an honor thing with some people, like proving to themselves that there was something powerful about the experience, maybe. I'm not really sure. And then some people seemed like they didn't really know what they were getting themselves into when they started the walk, including, unfortunately, the first death, which was the youngest of the bunch, Curly, number 7. Now, that was one of the probably saddest ones because he just couldn't go on anymore. I can't... What was it that happened to him exactly? I think it was... Was it his ankle or something that ends up getting messed up? I can't remember exactly how he died, but there was something that happened to him and he just ended up having to give up. And it was unfortunate because again, this movie right from the beginning kills off the youngest person in the entire group. And I didn't really know what the ticket was going to be. There was a lot of speculation even within like the people in the walk that it was just going to be some sort of joke, and then at the end they were all just going to go home, right? There wasn't going to be any like actual death. But when they found out that there was real death in the situation, of course, it was kind of made everything a little bit more real for everybody, I think. And again, there was rules too, like you couldn't fall under the speed limit. Each time you got a warning, you had to walk for an hour before that warning was gone at that speed limit. And then, of course, with your third warning, you got your ticket punched. Now, you had a chance, it seemed, a little bit of time before they ended up punching your ticket. And if you walked off of the road at any point, your ticket would be punched immediately, regardless. Now, there were only two people that I ever saw run off of the road in the entire movie, and one of them tried to escape into like a store and was just shot immediately, and then another one, when they were on this part of the stretch of the highway, tried to run off, and I was like, okay, well, you're not going to make it very far in the wide open. You have a better chance of there was a pretty good chance of being able to, I guess, jump into the water at one point where they were in like this little alleyway almost. That might have been the best chance of escape for sure, because if you were able to dive into the water and they thought they got you, maybe you could pop up somewhere else. I'm not really sure. Or they would have just waited there until ran out of breath and then had to come up to the surface and shot you. I'm not really sure. It seems that, yeah, it seems that there was enough military personnel there to make sure that nobody ended up making it out that wasn't supposed to, right? Which is kind of crazy. So there was little kind of groups formed within the walk, even though one of the rules that most people seem to make was that you weren't supposed to make friends during the walk. Now, this movie went on a emotional roller coaster because it seemed like there was tensions between uh, Garrity and McVrees at certain times, and then McVrees kind of brushed off whatever Garrity was doing because he believed that Garrity's reason for winning the race was the most important. Now, again, McVrees did try to tell him that, he should just go back to his mom at the end because the wish should just be to just go back home and not worry about killing General. Now, of course, at the very end of the movie, I was like, okay, we're getting right down to the wire, down to the finish line. All this crowd is clearing out to let somebody make it to the, stopping point, right? And now I was like, okay, McVrees is going to sacrifice himself. And that seemed to be what was happening. And of course, they were both down to their very last warning. Now, Garrity comes back and picks up McVrees and says, just walk with me a little bit longer. And at this point, McVrees, I think, was at his wit's end. And so was Garrity, too. And then Garrity just kneels down and says, I can't find a reason to go on. And I was like, oh my God, dude. You were you were the one that was meant to win because you had the most like powerful story out of all of them, it seemed. Which is kind of crazy. Now, obviously, McVrees throws away his wish and wishes for the same thing that Garrity was going to wish for, which was the gun uh, at the very end of the movie, and ends up shooting the general and then walking away. Now, I'm not really sure if he actually did walk away or he ended up getting killed too because of killing the general, or whether he just walked away without any of the prize money because of what he had done. It kind of left it open ended to me. Now, throughout the movie, again, there was a little group formed called the Musketeers, and it was Garrity, McVrees, Baker, and Olson. And of course, Olson kind of made the joke that, like, how are we going to be Musketeers when there's four of us? But that wasn't really the point. They were kind of forming a group, and it showed that you can form a bond in a very short amount of time with people, regardless of what's going on around you. And I think that was kind of important throughout the movie. Now, even if they were fighting and, kind of nitpicking at one another, there was still a bond between certain characters that was definitely formed throughout the movie. Now, Barkovich was definitely the one that was the outlier, I would say. And of course, you could tell that he felt guilt for what he had done early on. Now, it seemed like he was trying to win by any means necessary, and I didn't really agree with what he did to the other one, Rank, trying to egg him on, trying to get under his skin, and then eventually he ended up getting him killed at the end. And you could see the regret in his face when he did it, and of course, they were poking at him throughout the entire movie, and he kept trying to say that he had plans for everybody, but he really didn't. And in the end, the guilt got to him, and he ended up committing suicide uh, eventually. Now, there were a couple of people too that tried to get onto the military vehicles. One of them was a bit more successful than the other. Uh, Parker was the most successful one. He ended up actually shooting one of the soldiers before he was shot himself. And then there were some deaths. There were a couple deaths that they didn't show. Baker, who made it really far, uh, just eventually ended up having like an internal hemorrhage and just couldn't carry on anymore. And eventually, I think his brain just started shutting down, and he walked as long as he could with McVries and Garrity, but eventually he just had to give up. And I think he did tell them not to look back, and they didn't. They just kind of showed it like a little blurry bit. And then again, same thing when Stebbins ended up backing out of the race. They just showed him in the very background. And then it was just McVries and Garrity. And yeah, this definitely was a sad film for sure. There was a lot of people who unfortunately went out in a very brutal way, and I think every ticket that was punched was unfortunate. Again, I wouldn't recommend entering any competition like this if anything ever happened like this in real life. It would just be kind of crazy to enter. It would take a extreme amount of guts to enter anything like that, knowing that, especially if you knew what you were getting yourself into, knowing that you could die in a walk like that. Now, again, I don't think anything quite this extreme will ever happen in my lifetime, but who knows? Um, who knows if stuff like this actually happens around the world? It's hard to say. Now, obviously, this was fiction, right? Like every Stephen King book is fictional. But again, it would be crazy if a competition like this actually did take place. Now, I believe everybody kind of had a reason that they were in the race, and I feel like some people were kind of pulled in, like the race, the walk. And I feel like some people were pulled into it for a certain reason, especially Garrity. It seemed like he was almost like invited to it in a sense at the very beginning of the movie when they were like, we're looking forward to your participation sort of thing. So it almost seemed like even though he entered, it felt like everybody was kind of handpicked, like Garrity had said throughout the movie. Because everybody puts in for it across the country, but only 50 people are picked. And it kind of seems like those 50 people might be handpicked for a certain reason. So, did the general know some of these people, and maybe he's trying to get rid of them? I'm not really sure. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes unanswered in this film. But again, I feel like maybe an alternate ending to this movie would maybe explain a little bit more. Or maybe Garrity is the one that wins at the end in the alternate ending. I'm not really sure. Or maybe they both cross the finish line in this alternate ending and then something else goes down. There's so many things that could happen differently in this movie. So I'm kind of interested to see exactly what it could be. And there were definitely some happy moments in this movie, like the friendship, like the bond between certain people. There were some sad moments in this movie, like when Olsen said that when his gum ran out, that he was done, and he didn't unfortunately last very long after that. And a lot of people got sick during the walk, or ended up having, like something else happen to them, or they just kind of gave up and ran away, and they were shot, unfortunately, or some people kind of had like a certain strategy in the beginning that just didn't end up working. And then of course on the hill, I think that was where a lot of people ended up getting shot. And it almost seemed like McVries at one point was just trying to say, the Musketeers were just the two of them at that point. Now I'm not really sure exactly what happened on that hill, but I thought for sure that it was just the two of them at that point. So, yeah, it was definitely a crazy movie with a lot of intense scenes, and I was on the edge of my seat at some of them too. So, yeah, definitely not an easy watch, not for the faint of heart. This movie at all, but it was a really good movie, and that's why I gave it a 9 out of 10. If I didn't already say that, and I would watch it again, especially knowing that there's going to be an alternate ending. Again, saying that one more time. And I believe I've pretty much said everything I can about this movie. Unfortunately, the one song that was used in the soundtrack that I really did enjoy wasn't at, I don't remember it being used in any other part other than the very end credits. So a lot of people are walking out by that point, right? Which is unfortunate that they didn't play it at some point throughout the movie. Uh, but other than that, I don't really remember too many like musical scores in this movie. I think it was pretty quiet. Like there was a lot of dialogue and a lot of just, yeah, a lot of dialogue and a lot of scenes, and I don't think there was very much music throughout the movie. Now there was kind of like some odd, like I guess the crowd at the end seemed kind of ridiculous, and there was a few people here and there throughout the walk that they kind of saw, and of course a lot of people were homesick, even including Garrity, who almost dies trying to run to his mother, because that would be a hard thing to see your mother on the sidewalk cheering you on, even though you can't like run to her because you're going to get your warnings and then you're going to have to walk for 3 hours. And then by that point, he didn't have any shoes. So I'm not exactly sure how many days he walked without shoes, but it kept track of the days and it kept track of the miles, right? And I think they ended up walking like 300 some odd miles by the end of the walk. So that was pretty crazy. I wasn't sure if there was going to be like a finish line or whether it was just, until one of them was alive. Um, but there was a finish line, and obviously the competition did end when one of them was living. But I guess there was an end to the race, so, or the walk, as you would call it, the long walk. That's why they called it the long walk, because it was a very long way to walk. And originally I thought it was only going to be 100 miles, but it ended up being almost twice that. So, yeah, pretty crazy. Um, yeah, no, 100 miles. I guess it was twice that, wasn't it? Because yeah, it was almost 300 and it was 330 some odd miles that they ended up walking. So, kind of crazy, for sure. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much all I can say about this movie, and I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.